Hey, I haven't done one of these streams in a while, so I wanted to do one for January on the, a few hours before February. This one's going to be pretty similar to the last one I did, except it's going to be going over a few different topics in more detail. And yeah, and it's on YouTube this time instead of Twitch because I just wanted to try different platforms, see how it went. Um, yeah, this should be a pretty quick one, and I don't even know if I'll really do a Q&A, but I figured I would just do something. So this is January's Mattrifireside Chat. Thanks, Google. Yeah, tonight's agenda, pretty much like last month, Murphite and just Mattrified games and stuff I will be working on for 2024. So for Murphite, I didn't hit my 1.0 before January 26th release date like I wanted. I probably could have if I really worked like a lot before the 26th, which was when Tekken 8 came out, and I kind of wanted to beat that. But then I found out Under Night and Birth 2 came out on the 20th, and I was like, there's no way I'm beating the 20th. So I decided to wait and instead do February 12th. That is or at least the week of, is the goal of when I would like to pull Murphite out of early access. There will be some other stuff that day, I believe. There'll be some tournaments. I want to do another stream about the game, sort of a retrospective going over different things about it. So there'll be more social media updates about that in the coming days. The most things I have to do left, I have to update the Steam page and any other storefront pages with more accurate information and screenshots and trailers. I have to improve the AI, and I'm mostly just going to dumb it down so that people playing on difficulties 4 through 1 have an easier time. I'm not really going to, I might try to see if there's something simple I can do to make it more intelligent for the higher end, but I'm not going to stress making a super difficult AI for the game. The retrospective, as I previously mentioned, I want to work on, and I started toying around with a demo version. Murphite doesn't have one. I think even Battle High does, so it might be useful to have something just like you can play online and training mode with 4 characters, and that's it, and everything else is locked, is my goal. But we'll see. That's very low end. I might not be able to do that in time, and I'm not going to stress it if I can't. The overall goal post 1.0 is, obviously if I launch the game and there's bugs and all kinds of issues, I will, fix those as soon as I can. But I mostly want to just take a break from the game. There are certain things that, could I polish certain things more? Sure. But I'm at a point where I kind of need a break and I want to work on some other things. So I think by putting it out in 1.0, I can kind of do that without feeling like, anytime I work on something else, there's always like Murphite stuff I need to do. Well, when it's released, I can kind of say, okay, it's out there, and I will come back to it at another time. So yeah, things I'd like to do later is polish the story mode. It's just mostly a visual thing. Like, story mode is completely playable and readable, but some of the visuals aren't as nice as I'd like, at least with the character animation, facial animation stuff. I do want to do DLC of characters at some point. I kind of really need to write down the process for creating new characters, though, before I really get into that, because I think it's one of those, and plan ahead before, making a new one and then being like, I actually need these 20 other things for it that I haven't even thought of yet. So I got to be careful about that. I'd love to port the netcode to Photon Fusion or Quantum at some point. That's kind of a big task, and it's sort of an experimental one. So again, another reason that a 1.0 release would be nice is I can branch the project in source control and kind of experiment and not worry about breaking anything major. Just be like, I broke stuff in the branch, go back to the main trunk and continue. And console exploration, that is a long-term one. That one I don't even think I would really touch for a very long time. That would be like, kind of like when Mortal Kombat has like the legendary editions of their games, where it's like every DLC character and all the content. That's probably when I would explore console stuff. It's just be like, the entire game is done and I'm not making new content for Murphite anymore. It's going to be 100% finished. So for me and my other work, one is I want to kind of do more for the Patreon. I've only really been doing like one post a month, and sometimes it's just like, hey, there's a release build of Murphite you can test a little early. And because Murphite's going to be going to 1.0, I won't have that source of content. So I want to try to still do blogs and maybe early access blogs. Like I wrote one, I think 2 days ago about the 24 plans that I'm thinking about, that I'll talk about shortly, and then just do it in more detail later for like future. So if the blog I write in January, I'll post more publicly in February and so on, kind of do that kind of loop. Same goes with like, I'd like to do more prototyping again. That's one thing that while working on Murphy, I didn't really get a chance to just like prototype and do like goofy game ideas. And I want to get back into that, doing that more. So I could see doing something like that monthly, but I may not really start this until March, until after the 1.0 of Murphy is released. There's my Patreon link. So the next thing I also want to work on after Murphite is done is I want to work on Battlefield 2 A+ Exchange, which is just a new version of Battlefield 2 A+. It's going to have rollback netcode with Photon Quantum for 1v1 or 2v2 games, the 2v2 tag mode, or just, that I mentioned. Some characters will have new moves, possibly new characters, but that one is just like, don't bet on it. I'd like to put the mini games back in because people seem to like those and we're kind of bummed that they were gone. I've toyed with the idea of a crowdfunding campaign to possibly redo some character voiceover work or even get the new characters done, but that's also very up in the air, and I'll explain that later. Overall, I'm hoping it's a quick turnaround because all the art assets are done. It's just a lot of like making sure the gameplay is improved, and obviously I'm probably rewriting the game from scratch instead of using the old code, so there's some challenges there, and it's one of those things that like, oh yeah, this should be easy, and then you're like, oh geez, it's been 2 years and I'm still not done. If it's taking me that long, obviously I'm doing something wrong. So hopefully not that long, but my hope is it's something that I can at least get a playable out before the end of the year. And then my sort of game development goals, I talked about these, I think, in a previous stream, but I'm kind of going back. Murphite, as much as I enjoy it, it did not, it's not like $1 billion idea or something that I can like quit my job and work and focus on full time, which is fine. I'm more of a hobbyist when it comes to my game dev, and I think that's fine. And I need to really look at the work I do more from that perspective instead of stressing the like, oh, well, it needs to sell and it needs all these product things. And sometimes just being like, I don't care. Like, it's okay if I'm not doing everything that like a AAA game is doing. I can't do that. I'm a solo dev. So like, it's kind of silly. And that really comes back to the next point is like, I need to not waste a ton of time doing product tasks is another thing. Like anything that if I find myself going, the game could still exist if I don't do this, then I need to not stress as much. And that's kind of a hard thing because there's certain tasks that are kind of on a spectrum of that, and you kind of want to still do certain things well. And I still haven't really figured out what this whole game versus product task concept really means. But for me, there's just sort of this idea of like, if I can't do it myself, if I can't fund it myself, then I probably shouldn't really be stressing it too much, is another perspective of it. And the third thing is just really asking myself, why am I doing something? Like, why am I doing a certain feature a certain way? I think one thing in Murphite that I kind of regret doing is the story mode. It's just way too big, and it just took way longer than I wanted. And I'll talk about that more in the retrospective, but I felt like I was trying to chase a AAA thing when I was a solo dev, and there are ways that you can portray a game's narrative and characters and world and build that world without like a visual novel inside your game, which is pretty much what I ended up writing, which took like a really long time to proofread, long time to implement, and it was just sort of very draining, and it's kind of the one thing that I kind of wish I didn't do the way I did it. But I'll talk about that more when I do the retrospective around the 12th. So that's all I really have today. Not a big deal, just something I wanted to get out and experiment more with streaming to a different platform, see how it goes. If you watch, whether you watch now or later, thanks. Feel free to ask questions and stuff. So thanks.